Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, Allincrypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another jam-packed daily market update. If you're new around here, we do drop one of these every single day around 1 p.m. UK time to help you guys stay up to date with the latest and greatest things happening in the crypto space, but also the broader markets. That's exactly what we're going to be doing in this daily market update. We're going to kick things off with probably one of the biggest opportunities the cryptocurrency market has to offer right now, and that is the enabling of the evolution of money. Now, the evolution of money is stablecoins, or CBDCs, which is the more European approach. The American approach is to essentially employ public companies to enable the evolution of money, and in doing that, further and propagate dollar dominance, and also introduce a buyer, I would argue, eventually the largest buyer to the treasury market, which is struggling right now. And Scott Bessent said, he's looking at about $2 trillion of demand via stablecoins, essentially. And I always bring this up, and people say, oh, well, we can't invest in stablecoins. They're stable. Nobody's suggesting, or certainly I'm not, that you go out and buy stable coins. I'm suggesting, not suggesting you go and buy anything, but I'm suggesting that the cryptocurrencies, and they'll be public, because there's clear advantages for public ledgers over private ones, that enable the evolution of money are going to be very valuable as a result of it. And certainly, I have a portfolio hopefully full of those. So we're going to start things off there. Obviously, David Sachs, AI and Cryptos spoke about this just yesterday, and he spoke about legislative bills being passed. We know the Genius Act is sort of making the rounds, if you will, and going through the process. But he also reiterates what the Treasury said in regards to, what Scott Bessent had to say, and talks about trillions of dollars of demand for dollar and the dollar, and certainly Treasuries is on the back end of this. And there's a major opportunity there. So we're going to kick things off there. Then Google actually released some research that reveals quantum computing may break Bitcoin's encryption 20x easier than previously thought. And it's interesting because BlackRock recently put into their Bitcoin ETF a kind of a small print that essentially null and voided them from any reprisal from investors or pushback from investors if Bitcoin suffers from a quantum computing issue. And actually there was a Federal Reserve paper that spoke about how if we're going to adopt a new payment system, which they are going to do, and it's going to be public blockchains, it needs to be essentially quantum proof. And there's certain cryptos that already are that. It's interesting, actually, all of this, because I've recently just started buying a quantum computing stock. I won't mention what it is. I want to reserve that for the Patreons, but we are looking into the quantum computing space, which seems to be, there's something going on there. There's big money, big volume entering it and kind of initiating what could be more of a bull market in a hot sector. So we will look at that. Then we didn't get a chance yesterday because I'd been away for a little while and we had lots to cover. We're going to look at CoinShares digital asset fund flows. We like to look at this every Monday. It gives us a kind of inkling in regards to what's happening for more of an institutional alco investor. Really interesting things. Great inflows. One of the highest inflows that we've seen took place last week. But actually, interestingly, there was one coin that got smashed in terms of outflows, and that was XRP. And why is that? And then there's some other sort of XRP news in regards to Dubai launching a $16 billion real estate tokenized platform on XRP. And then we'll finish off with some TA. Let's start things off with what we promised, and that is David Sachs talking about the evolution of money. Major opportunity, guys. Pay attention. Let's dive into this.
Stable coins. There's this bill trying to make its way through the Senate. What's your take on the concerns, certainly on the Democrat side of the aisle, that there aren't enough safeguards here to keep maybe the president himself and his family from benefiting from this kind of legislation?
Well, so first of all, we have significant bipartisan support for this. I think 15 Democrats voted for the bill to pass this key procedural threshold of cloture, which means there'll be no filibuster against the bill. We have every expectation now that it's going to pass. And I think the reason it's going to pass is because stablecoins offer a new, more efficient, cheaper, smoother payment system, new payment rails for the U.S. economy. It also extends the dominance of the dollar online, and it also creates billions of dollars or trillions of dollars of demand for our treasury. So I think for all these reasons, the stablecoin bill is going to pass, and it's going to pass with significant bipartisan support.
How long do you think before stablecoin would start to really have that dollar support effect you're talking about?
I mean, I think it'll be immediate. So we already have over $200 billion in stablecoins. It's just unregulated. And I think that if we provide the legal clarity and legal framework for this, I think we could create trillions of dollars of demand for our treasuries practically overnight, very quickly.
And that's the plan, ladies and gentlemen. That was the plan from the beginning. David Sachs, by the way, the answers to most things lie historically. The answers to why we are what we are or how we ended up here. Of course, you need to kind of follow the lineage of history that they've basically tried to distort massively. When you look at the kind of historical account of or the mainstream historical account of how we ended up here, there's holes in it from start to finish. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of it is very increasingly becoming disprovable. But the reason I bring that up is David Sachs actually played a role in the PayPal mafia. He was somebody that Peter Thiel, and he's actually been quoted in saying Peter Thiel is one of the most intelligent people he's ever met. Peter Thiel rang David Sachs and brought him into the PayPal mafia, and PayPal played a key role in enabling digital money. The PayPal mafia is all over XRP and XLM. And that's going to play those two cryptos are going to play a key role in enabling the evolution of money, which is stable coins. And I'd say there's a link there, but very interesting, very in line with what we already think. Let's talk about quantum computing now. Latest Google research reveals quantum computing may break Bitcoin's encryption 20x easier than previously thought. New findings show RSA encryption could be cracked within fewer than 1 million qubits versus previously estimated at 20 million. And BlackRock recently put into their filings essentially that a clause about quantum computing and Bitcoin. And I don't want to sort of go into any quantum computing plays that I'm holding because it's very much reserved for the patrons, my stock portfolio. But this, for example, is a quantum computing play. Look at all the volume showing up. I'll show you another one. I won't show you the one that I own. We've had targets on these for a while. D-Wave quantum computing. Yeah, one of the beautiful things about what I do here on the channel, and we're one of the few people that do it, is we do 360 analysis when it comes to the markets. And it's very interesting that BlackRock put that clause in. There's now more concerns about quantum computing. And actually, we're seeing the quantum computing sector do very well. And I've, of course, recently positioned into... I only own a single quantum computing stock. We're also looking into EVs, things like this, obviously, and Bitcoin miners and so on and so forth. But do become a patron to unlock all that. So that's some interesting news I wanted to highlight. Wouldn't it be interesting if they kind of get rid of Bitcoin through quantum computing and then sort of push you into the ones that they had kind of designed from the start to enable this kind of global financial singularity? And this one world system. I had a comment yesterday saying, how can you invest in your own demise? They get quite biblical with it and revelationary. We were told it's going to happen, and so on and so forth. So let's talk a little bit now about what we usually cover on a Monday, and that is CoinShares digital asset fund flows. This is their weekly report. Digital asset inflows hit 3.3 billion in a week, driving year-to-date total to a record of 10.8 billion. Not bad. You can see it was quite a spectacular week last week in terms of inflows. Digital asset inflows hit 3.3 billion last week, pushing year-to-date inflows, so on and so forth. Bitcoin led with 2.9 billion, so it's only 0.4 billion elsewhere in inflows, while short Bitcoin products saw 12.7 billion, the highest weekly inflows since December 2024. Interesting. XRP's 80-week inflow streak ended with a record 37.2 million in outflows. That's insane. I mean, that's a huge outflow. And, XRP's remarkable 80-week inflow streak ended with 37.2 million in inflows. In outflows, the largest on record. Why would that be, given everything that's going on, all the ETF news, so on and so forth? I mean, we're unbelievably bullish on XRP. Something's going on here in terms of this. This is more of an institutional elk of investor who could say, okay, they're dumping because they know something's coming. Or one thing I have noticed with ETFs is often people will exit the ETPs in preparation for the ETF, so they can actually buy that. They can have that cash there to buy that, rather than kind of hold the trust or whatever it is through Grace or Trust. So I'm going to do some digging into this, see where these outflows actually came from, and look historically at what we saw with Bitcoin and Ethereum. We'll probably do a video on that later on today. On the topic of XRP, despite that somewhat puzzling news, this is from Jungle Inc. I believe this is a XRP content creator. Breaking: Dubai launches $16 billion real estate tokenization platform on XRPL. Dubai is officially turning property into programmable assets. And talking about Peter Thiel, this has been his vision from the start. Literally. It's very interesting. Elon looking to launch the X platform for payments and more broad things, savings, so on and so forth. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being XRP or XLM that end up facilitating all of that. Dubai is officially turning property into programmable assets. The government's new platform, Propco Mint, lets investors buy fractional ownership in Dubai real estate. We spoke to the likes of Red Swan, who are doing that on Hedera. Everything is yet to be tokenized, and I think the interesting thing is that we're at a stage. If you look at sort of real world assets, you're talking about like a few billion that are on chain. There's trillions that are to come, and the ones that enable that, again, major opportunity. It lets investors buy fractional ownership of Dubai real estate with title deeds tokenized directly on the XRP ledger. Key details backed by the Dubai Land Department, targeting 16 billion in tokenized real estate by 2033, so it's not all coming online. Entry point as low as $540. Full integration with official property records. This is real-world adoption on a national scale powered by the XRP ledger. And, yeah, we'll see. This is going to take a while, and we're still in this kind of infancy stage for the cryptocurrency space. I do think that's going to change, and it's one of the exciting prospects of this. It's like investing in the internet when nobody used it or knew what it was, and now look at where it is today. Everyone uses it, and it's integrated in everything, and distributed ledgers are on a similar trajectory. You want to be invested today in the ones that are going to enable all of that in that future. Let's talk a little bit about price action. There's not that much to say. From a macro point of view, a weekly time frame, it looks good. From a sort of more zoomed in point of view, our falling wedge played out just like we said it would. You've broken out. Could be a bit of an inverse head and shoulder turn, a run to sort of the 130k mark. Not quite sure what happened with MicroStrategy yesterday, but I would say this bounces around here. This has still got quite a way to go, and I think there's some things going on in the macro. Jerome Powell spoke Sunday night. He didn't really say a lot about anything, to be honest, and I think that's uncertainty for the markets. There's still the whole tariff situation. However, I think the markets are going to prevail. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to love and leave you. Some interesting things covered there. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Don't forget to become a subscriber, and I'll see you soon.